Elliot, a 22-year-old college student, introverted and reserved, navigates through the endless expanse of the digital world. His mind constantly buzzing with curiosity, seeking knowledge, unraveling the layers of technology that shape his world. The silence of the room is heavy, yet comforting as he finds solace in the glow of his screen. This is his escape, his way of connecting. A young man in search of something more, hidden in the depths of information behind the screen that both isolates and liberates him. The itch for something more, something beyond the ordinary, gnawed at him relentlessly. A sense of dissatisfaction settled deep within his bones, a feeling that no matter how much he searched, the world around him always felt too small. As he sat there, the glow of the screen illuminated his face, drawing him closer to something darker, something unknown. The uncertainty hung in the air, but so did the pull of curiosity. One click, one decision, could change everything. It promised a harmless entry point into a world full of obscure knowledge, private marketplaces, and secretive forums. A place where anonymity reigns, where curiosity could wander freely, but no one ever truly knows what lies beyond the surface. With each click, Elliot's heart races just a little faster. A flicker of doubt passes through his mind, but it's quickly brushed aside. This is just the beginning, he tells himself. And so, he continues, into the unknown. In the dimly lit confines of Elliot's bedroom, the air is thick with anticipation. His fingers hover over the keyboard and his gaze is fixed, unwavering. The Tor browser begins its slow, deliberate boot-up process. The screen, initially blank, starts to flicker to life. As it loads, Elliot's reflection becomes visible, merging with the screen's darkness, like a shadow in an unfamiliar world. This is no ordinary space, it's the dark web, chaotic, raw, and unpolished. Links flicker, some broken, others unreachable. Elliot, caught between excitement and dread, knows he's on the edge of something vast and unknown, a realm where the rules don't quite apply. He's about to step deeper into the abyss. There was a strange allure to the anonymity here, no ads, no censorship. Just pure, unfiltered thoughts, buried beneath layers of secrecy. A maze of hidden corners where the rules of the real world didn't apply. And in this chaos, a thread called Unsolved Mysteries beckoned, promising answers to questions best left unasked. Or maybe, just maybe, something even darker. In a dark corner of the web, secrets are waiting to be uncovered. What if I told you the dark web knows you? His fingers hover over the keyboard, doubt lingering in the air, but with a smirk, he clicks on the thread. The words on the screen shift, cold and unsettling. I see you, Elliot. Confusion turns to unease. The room grows colder. He stares, struggling to make sense of the message. His breath becomes shallow, his heart racing. The silence is suffocating, the weight of the unknown pressing in, as Elliot remains frozen in place, unsure of what to do next. What do you do when the dark web knows your name? As the night closes in, the room grows colder, and the darkness feels closer. I can't shake this feeling. Something's wrong. My mind keeps racing, trying to make sense of it, but it's slipping away. My breath is shallow, and my hands, they won't stop trembling. It was just the dark web. Just the dark web. Nothing to worry about. Nothing at all. Elliot's voice softens as if trying to convince himself. Just the dark web. Just nothing to worry about. In the dimly lit bedroom, Elliot sat hunched at his desk, his mind heavy with exhaustion. Papers were scattered like forgotten thoughts, and the remnants of empty coffee cups littered the surface, each one a silent testament to his sleepless nights. The faint glow from his laptop screen bathed his face in an unnatural light, making the hollowness in his eyes all the more noticeable. His hand hovered over the keyboard, paralyzed as his gaze locked onto the chilling words on the screen. I see you, Elliot. The words seemed to pierce through the silence, a haunting message that echoed in his mind long after the screen went dark. He closed the laptop, but the unease lingered, crawling up his spine like an unseen hand. No matter how hard he tried to push it aside, the words clung to him, relentless and cold, an ever-present shadow that gnawed at his thoughts. Was he being watched? Or was it something far worse? The question hung in the air, unanswered, as the room closed in around him. The room is cloaked in shadows, the only light a flickering glow from Elliot's screen, its eerie hue painting his face in ghostly shades of blue. Time slips by unnoticed as he clicks, endlessly, through the labyrinth of forums that populate the dark web. Forgotten histories, ancient texts, conspiracies, each new thread more cryptic than the last. It all seems too real, too vivid to be fiction. As his eyes scan the screen, something shifts. What started as innocent curiosity has morphed into something darker, more insidious. The mysteries before him aren't just questions to be answered, they've become an obsession, a puzzle that won't let him turn away. With each click he's pulled deeper and deeper into the abyss. His pulse quickens and the shadows seem to close in around him, a silent force guiding him further into the unknown. There's no turning back now. It's late. The dim glow of his laptop is the only thing cutting through the darkness, casting long eerie shadows across the room. Elliot scrolls through the forum, whispers from the void, his eyes glazed with tiredness. Then a new thread catches his attention, its title sending a shock straight to his spine. "I see you now, Elliot. You've opened the door and there's no going back." His breath catches. A chill runs down his back. It feels personal, too personal. The cursor hovers, trembling above the mouse. His stomach churns, but the pull of curiosity is too strong. With a click, the screen flickers to life, showing a grainy, poorly lit video. A shadowy figure appears. Its voice, distorted, cuts through the silence. "We're always watching. You'll never leave." Elliot freezes. The room feels colder, his heart racing in his chest. And then, his screen flashes. A horrifying image of his own bedroom fills the screen. From a perfect angle. Someone's been in his room, watching him. Elliot sat there in the dead of night, his bedroom cloaked in an eerie, suffocating stillness. The only light came from the flickering glow of his laptop, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch unnaturally across the walls. The weight of the air was oppressive, pressing down on him as if the room itself was closing in. But then, something changed. The screen distorted, and there it was, a live image of his own bedroom reflected back at him through the window. But it wasn't just the room, it was the way the shadows were too precise, the stillness too real. As if someone had been here, watching. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. His heart raced as panic surged through him. Without thinking, he slammed the laptop shut, but the feeling of being watched didn't go away. No matter how much he tried to deny it, the eyes, invisible, relentless, were still there, suffocating him with their presence. And no matter how hard he tried to rationalize it, there was no denying the truth. Someone had been here. Someone was watching. Morning light seeps through the blinds, casting its quiet glow over the room, but the stillness in the air, it feels too thick. Elliot sits at his desk, staring at his phone. His hands tremble, hovering just above the screen, as if the simple act of typing has become an insurmountable challenge. Each letter slips just out of reach, a blur, as though his mind is losing its grip on reality. And then, shadows flicker, unnatural, on the edges of his vision. Whispers drift through the walls, soft, indistinct, but they don't belong. The world feels fragile, as if it might crumble at any moment. He looks down at his phone, his heart racing when he sees the message, a string of numbers that doesn't make sense. "You can't leave. We see you." The walls close in, suffocating him, trapping him in a prison of his own thoughts. The presence around him feels real now, watching, waiting. His mind unravels, and the line between reality and madness blurs further, pulling him deeper into the dark. The apartment, once a sanctuary, has become a prison. The walls close in, suffocating Elliot as he sits frozen, eyes locked on the screen before him. Each message, each cryptic text, only deepens the darkness that's begun to swallow him whole. His hands tremble, his pulse echoes in his ears. Is it real? Or has his mind finally begun to unravel? The air is thick, too thick. It presses against him, pushes him deeper into this nightmare. The whispers, the numbers, the feeling of being watched, it all blends together into an oppressive presence, lurking in every corner, seeping into the very air he breathes. Desperation claws at him. He searches for answers, but the deeper he looks, the further they slip away. What did he find? What did he awaken by digging too deep? He doesn't know. But the consequences of his curiosity are already unfolding. And it's too late to turn back now. The room is thick with tension, shadows casting long, eerie stretches across the walls. Elliot's hands shake uncontrollably as they hover over the keyboard, each click echoing in the silence. Beads of sweat form on his forehead, dripping down his face as his eyes dart between the screen and the door, as if he expects someone, or something, to burst in at any moment. His breath quickens, a shallow, panicked rhythm as he frantically tries to erase every trace of the dark web's grip on him. But just as he thinks he's in control, the screen flickers, a glitch that sends a chill down his spine. The dark interface reappears, mocking him, a cruel reminder that there's no escaping it. His heart races as he stares, helpless, at the relentless screen. No matter how hard he tries, the darkness refuses to fade. Trapped, he can only watch as the web pulls him deeper, its hold unyielding. Elliot lies in his bed, trapped in a waking nightmare. His eyes are wide open, but sleep eludes him. He stares at the ceiling as though wishing it would swallow him whole and take him away from this unrelenting restlessness. The room around him feels suffocating, as if the very walls are closing in. Shadows stretch and twist from every corner, elongating like dark fingers, reaching, grasping. The soft creak of the old house reverberates through the air, every sound amplified in the stillness of the night. There's something else, a slow, deliberate breath, not his own. A chill runs down his spine as the presence in the room becomes undeniable, pressing in, growing stronger, more real with every passing second. The tension is unbearable. The silence is broken only by the beating of his heart and the suffocating air around him. In the stillness of the night, the city hums softly, distant and unbothered by the unease inside Elliot's apartment. Suddenly, the sharp chime of the doorbell cuts through the silence, making Elliot flinch in surprise. He stands there for a moment, frozen, before slowly approaching the door. His hand hesitates on the handle as he peers into the empty hallway, confusion creeping in. With a furrowed brow, he retreats into the apartment, the door clicking shut behind him. Then the phone rings. His heart races as he picks it up, only to be greeted by an unsettling hum of static, the line eerily silent. The camera shifts toward the window. There, in the rain-soaked darkness, a hooded figure stands motionless, their face obscured in shadow. Elliot blinks, and in that split second the figure disappears as if it were never there. The sound of the rain becomes louder, more pronounced, filling the void of the moment. And yet, the sense of something, or someone, watching lingers in the air, heavy and unnerving. Elliot sits hunched over his desk, fingers moving feverishly across the keyboard, his mind racing with desperate words. The strange and unsettling events that have been creeping into his reality blur the lines of his understanding. Each keystroke feels like a plea for help, a cry for answers that never come. His eyes flicker between the screen and the chaotic distortion that threatens to consume him. His phone buzzes with a message from a friend. "You've been working too hard, Elliot. You need a break." The words feel distant, like they belong to someone else's reality. His grip tightens around the phone, his face a mix of frustration and fear. There's no comfort in those words, only a deeper sense of isolation. He turns away from the screen, his heart racing. The more he tries to reach out, the further he seems to fall away from the world around him. His reality, once so tangible, is slipping through his fingers, leaving him to grapple with the eerie and distorted images that only he can see, trapped between two worlds. Alone in the dim, oppressive silence of his apartment, Elliot's world is shrinking. His only companion, the cold, flickering glow of the computer screen, seems to pulse with a life of its own. Each click, each keystroke drags him deeper into the abyss of the dark web. The answers he's searching for aren't just elusive, they're dangerous. As the images on the screen warp and twist in real time, a gnawing dread rises within him. His hands shake, his breath shortens, but there's no turning back now. He clicks again. A chilling message appears, one that seals his fate. "You have seen too much, Elliot. Now you are part of it." His heart races. His mind screams for him to stop. But it's too late. He's already in too deep. The video flickers to life, static crackling, fragmented images leap across the screen. Through the haze, Elliot's face appears, twisted, unrecognizable. His eyes, wide and full of terror, reflect a reality twisted beyond comprehension. His voice, a hollow echo, mechanical, as though ripped from the very fabric of the air. We are all part of it now. The web owns you. The silence, suffocating, as the screen fades to black. And in that moment, the world goes still. Elliot remains, frozen, staring at the empty screen. The fear is real. The room was suffocatingly silent, save for the relentless buzzing of the alarm clock. The dim light filtering through the thick curtains did little to chase away the overwhelming darkness that clung to every corner. Elliot sat stiffly at his desk, unmoving, his posture unnaturally rigid. The cold glow of the computer screen bathed his face in an eerie blue light, highlighting the gauntness of his cheeks, the lifeless hollowness of his wide, unblinking eyes. He didn't flinch, didn't blink, just sat there, staring into the screen as if something unseen had ensnared him in its grasp. The room felt wrong, as if reality itself had fractured, trapping him in a moment that refused to pass. Later that day, outside Elliot's room, his friends stood by the door, their voices edged with growing concern as they knocked urgently, calling his name. The silence behind the door was suffocating. One of them, hesitating only for a moment, reached for the doorknob. It turned with an agonizing creak, the door swinging open to reveal a room frozen in time. A wave of unease washed over them as they stepped inside. The air felt heavy, the dim light casting distorted shadows across the walls. Then they saw him. Elliot sat there, unnervingly still, his body slumped, his expression void of life. Panic surged through one friend as they rushed to him, gripping his shoulders, shaking him with rising desperation. But Elliot didn't respond. He didn't blink. He didn't move. The room remained silent, except for the rapid, unsteady breaths of those who had just stepped into something far more terrifying than they had ever imagined. The monitor flickered to life, its pale, unsteady glow the only source of illumination in the room. The moment the words appeared, cold, calculated, and unerringly personal, an invisible force seemed to press down on the group. Welcome to the dark web. You were always meant to be here. Elliot's breath hitched. His friends exchanged uneasy glances, their faces bathed in the sickly light of the screen. A silence, heavier than words, settled over them. It was the kind of silence that carried weight, the kind that whispered of something watching, waiting. The faint hum of the computer filled the air, but underneath it, something else lurked, a presence they couldn't see but could feel in the pit of their stomachs. Elliot's face flickers between reality and raw data, his features distorted, his expression frozen in silent horror. Glowing streams of code twist and pulse around him, shifting, morphing, alive. His form wavers, unraveling like a corrupted fire, breaking apart into countless digital fragments, dissolving piece by piece into the abyss. The camera pulls back, revealing the vast, infinite void of cyberspace, a shifting nightmare of ever-changing data, where reality no longer holds meaning. Trapped in this surreal, unrecognizable landscape, Elliot is no longer human, merely a ghost in the machine, lost in an ocean of digital oblivion. The room is draped in shadows, the only light coming from the flickering glow of a monitor. A lone figure sits hunched forward, their face hidden in the depths of the darkness, but their eyes, cold and unblinking, reflect the unstable light of the screen. They watch, enraptured, as fragmented images of Elliot dance and distort before them. A slow, twisted smile creeps across their lips, an expression of silent amusement, or something far more sinister. Then, without warning, the screen sputters, the image warping into static, a sickening hiss breaking the heavy silence. For a moment, nothing. Just darkness, stillness, and then, white text fades onto the void of the screen. A message. Someone is watching, and they are never alone. In the suffocating silence of his dimly lit apartment, Elliot sat motionless, his body rigid, his breath barely audible. The only light came from his computer screen, casting an eerie glow on his hollow, unblinking eyes. His fingers hovered just above the keyboard, as if caught between thought and action, paralyzed in an unnatural stillness. The screen before him pulsed with a message, its words digging into his consciousness like unseen claws. You are part of the web now. The web is part of you. The flickering monitor cast shifting shadows along the walls, warping the room into something sinister, something alive. And then, without warning, the screen went black, swallowing the last sliver of light. A void of silence followed. But in that darkness, something still watched, something waited. As time drifts forward, the world barely acknowledges the weight of loss. A black body bag, zipped tight and unyielding, is wheeled out of Elliot's apartment, its silent presence a grim finality. The harsh glow of a phone screen pierces the dim atmosphere, flashing a cold and impersonal headline, Mysterious Death of Local Man. Outside, the city breathes, unbothered. People move, cars rush by, neon signs flicker against the wet pavement. Life continues, indifferent to the tragedy that just unfolded. But at the apartment door, Sarah lingers, her fingers trembling at her sides. Grief etches itself into her face, hesitation gripping her like a phantom's hand. She wants to move, to speak, to do something, but the weight of Elliot's absence presses down, suffocating, unshakable. The world may have moved on, but she hasn't. Sarah sat at Elliot's desk, her fingers trembling slightly as they hovered over the keyboard. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the laptop as it powered on. She swallowed hard, the feeling of unease tightening in her chest. The screen flickered, bathing her face in its pale glow, revealing an open Tor browser. No password, no security, just an invitation into the unknown. Her breath hitched. That wasn't right. Just as the thought crossed her mind, a message materialized against the pitch-black screen. The words sent a shiver racing down her spine. Hello, Sarah. I've been waiting for you. Sarah's breath hitched, her fingers trembling as she hesitantly clicked on the message. The screen flickered, static crackling for a brief, unsettling moment before a video began to play. Her stomach twisted in dread. It was Elliot's apartment. She knew it instantly. But something was off. The angle. The perspective. It wasn't filmed normally, it was as if someone had been hiding, watching from the shadows. The camera remained motionless, eerily fixed on the space. Then, in the dim background, something stirred. A dark shape, shifting in a way that defied logic, its movements unnatural, almost inhuman. A cold shiver ran through her, fear constricting her chest as she whispered, her voice barely audible, "No, this isn't real." But deep down she knew it was. And someone, or something, was watching. Sarah's breath hitched as the darkness in the corner stirred, revealing something twisted and wrong. A figure, tall, distorted, emerged from the void, its limbs jerking in unnatural spasms, its presence suffocating. Hollow eyes locked onto her, unblinking, filled with something that was neither life nor death. A dreadful stillness lingered before it began to turn, its face, a grotesque, flickering blur, shifting in and out of recognition. Every step it took pulled it closer, its form growing more monstrous, its presence thick with an unspeakable dread. Then, just as the weight of silence became unbearable, a deep, rasping voice cut through the dark, slow and deliberate, dripping with finality. "You shouldn't have come here. This is where you belong now, Sarah." Sarah's pulse pounded in her ears as she slammed the laptop shut, her breath coming in sharp, uneven gasps. A cold, paralyzing fear wrapped around her, sending shivers down her spine. She stumbled backward, her trembling fingers gripping the desk as if it were the only thing keeping her grounded. The room was deathly silent, yet the voice still echoed in her mind, an unnatural whisper that refused to fade. And then, it came again. A soft, sinister murmur drifting through the air, seeping into her bones like ice. "Come back, Sarah." Sarah tossed and turned in bed, her sleep restless, her mind plagued by an unease she couldn't name. Then, without warning, her eyes snapped open. Her breath hitched, her skin slick with cold sweat. A deep, bone-chilling sensation slithered over her, crawling up her spine like unseen fingers. The darkness around her felt thicker than before, suffocating, pressing in. And then she saw it. Across the room, in the dim glow seeping from the hallway, a face. Twisted. Grinning. Watching. Its features were warped, unnatural, a grotesque mockery of humanity. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She gasped, her breath shaky, her body frozen in terror. Then, in the blink of an eye, it was gone. Only silence remained, an unbearable stillness stretching into the night. Sarah sat at her desk, rubbing her temples, exhaustion pressing down on her like an unbearable weight. The apartment was silent, too silent. It wasn't the comforting stillness of solitude but something else. Something unnatural. Then, from the darkness, a whisper slithered through the air, cold and suffocating. "You shouldn't have seen this. You can't leave now." Her breath caught in her throat. A shiver crawled down her spine as fear sank its claws into her chest. Heart hammering, she spun around, scanning the shadows, searching for the source. But there was nothing. No one. And yet, she wasn't alone. She could feel it. Sarah sat alone in the dim glow of her apartment, the only sound the faint hum of her laptop. Her fingers hovered over the lid, a deep hesitation gripping her chest. She shouldn't open it. She knew that. But curiosity gnawed at her, an undeniable pull she couldn't resist. With a slow, trembling breath, she lifted the screen. Instantly, the display flickered erratically, static crawling across the screen like something alive. Then it stopped. A message, stark and ominous, burned into the darkness. "You came back. You should have stayed away. Now there is no escaping." A chill crept up her spine. This wasn't normal. This wasn't right. Something was watching. And it knew she was here. Sarah sat frozen in her dimly lit apartment, her heart hammering in her chest. The cold glow of the computer screen cast deep shadows across the room, but her focus was locked on the image before her. Her own face stared back, but it wasn't right. The features were wrong, twisted, stretched beyond human recognition. A chill coiled around her spine as she tore her gaze away, glancing toward the window. Her breath caught. The reflection in the glass was moving, but she wasn't. It turned toward her, its lips curling into a slow, knowing grin. A sinister intelligence lurked behind its hollow eyes. Her pulse pounded as the screen flickered, the image zooming in, distorting further, transforming into something monstrous. Then the whisper came. Low, rasping, crawling beneath her skin. "We see you, Sarah. And now, you are part of us." The word sent an icy dread through her veins. She wanted to move, to scream. But she couldn't. The screen flickered again. This time her reflection stepped forward. Sarah's apartment was swallowed by darkness, the only source of light vanishing as her laptop screen went dead. A heavy, suffocating silence settled over the room. Her hands trembled, breath uneven as she stared at the lifeless device, heart pounding in her chest. Then the stillness shattered, a sharp vibration from her phone. Hesitant fingers lifted the device, dread pooling in her stomach as her eyes traced the words glowing on the screen. "We are watching you. We are inside you." A cold shiver clawed its way down her spine. The walls felt closer now, the air thick with something unseen, something wrong. Slowly, as if compelled by an invisible force, she turned to the mirror. And there, it wasn't her own face staring back. The reflection was twisted, unnatural, a grotesque imitation of herself, watching her with hollow, soulless eyes and a grin that did not belong. It knew she was looking. It was waiting. Sarah's apartment was suffocatingly silent, save for the distant hum of the city outside. The dim glow of the streetlights twisted the shadows on her walls into grotesque, shifting figures. Then the door, heavy and unmoving just moments ago, creaked open on its own, the sound dragging against her nerves like nails on glass. A long, unnatural shadow slithered across the floor, its shape warping, distorting as if it breathed. Sarah's pulse pounded in her ears. She couldn't move. She couldn't scream. The door slammed shut, the impact rattling the very air around her. In the trembling grip of her hand, her phone buzzed one last time. A message. Simple. Terrifying. "We never leave. We never forget." The screen flickered. Then, darkness swallowed everything. Sarah sat hunched over her computer, her hollow, sleep-deprived eyes locked onto the screen as its eerie glow painted flickering shadows across her cramped, dimly lit apartment. The room was silent, almost. Faint whispers slithered through the air, threading themselves into the hum of her thoughts, indistinct yet suffocating. The endless scroll of dark web pages reflected the turmoil in her mind, each cryptic image and forbidden secret feeding the growing unease within her. Her breathing turned shallow, ragged as she clutched her head, fingers digging into her temples, desperate to silence the insidious voices gnawing at the edges of her sanity. A flicker of movement caught her eye. Her pulse spiked as she turned sharply, her heart hammering against her ribs. But there was nothing. Nothing but the cold, unyielding darkness, staring back at her like an abyss, waiting to consume her whole. Sarah's breath hitches as she slams her laptop shut, her heartbeat pounding in her ears. With a sudden burst of determination, she pushes herself off the chair and strides toward the door. Her fingers curl around the handle, but just as she's about to turn it, an unnatural stillness grips the air. The whispers, soft, sinister, rise like a suffocating mist surrounding her. The shadows stretch, twisting toward her, warping reality itself. A cold shudder runs down her spine, and her grip weakens. Fear coils around her, paralyzing her limbs. She steps back, her wide eyes darting around the dimly lit room. Then, in a final act of defiance, she slams the laptop closed, desperate to silence whatever lingers. But as the lid clicks shut, a chilling realization settles in. Her laptop screen flickers back on, casting an eerie glow across the room. Her stomach drops. Something is here, and it's watching. Days slip away, blurring into an endless cycle of silence. Sarah sits alone in her dimly lit apartment, her world reduced to the glow of her phone screen. Dozens of missed calls, unread messages filled with desperate pleas. "Sarah, please, call me. Where are you?" But she doesn't reply. The air is heavy, stagnant, filled with the remnants of forgotten meals and discarded papers. Then a sound, soft at first, a knock at the door. She doesn't move. The knocking grows louder, more insistent. But Sarah remains still, trapped in a prison of her own making, swallowed by the isolation that has become her only companion. The dim glow of the computer screen flickers against the cold walls of Sarah's apartment, casting eerie shadows that stretch and twist. Lines of cryptic code scroll endlessly, her fingers moving over the keyboard with lifeless precision. Something is wrong. Her reflection in the monitor begins to distort, her face twisting, merging with the digital void beyond the glass. A whisper slithers through the speakers. At first, just a breath, then a voice, low and inescapable. "Sarah." The murmurs twist into a single, undeniable presence. "Elliot, you can never escape. You're part of us now." A cold shiver runs through her spine. Her lips part, her breath shallow. "I know." And then, darkness swallows everything.